Payday 2 is a game in which you rob banks and shoot people just trying to do their jobs. In this video, we only do one of those things, and I can tell you that we do get shot at while doing it. With my unbelievable amount of experience in this game, it should be undeniable that I know what I'm doing and that my inability to navigate the menus is a joke. Not a very funny one at that, but a joke nevertheless. Jumping ahead a little bit to where Owl doesn't look like a robotic rhinoceros giving birth to a human, we find ourselves at level 36 and looking quite dapper if I do say so myself. To give a little bit of context to a game full of chaos seems like it would really take away from the fun of it. But I will spoil that we are starting off today with a contract called Mallcrasher. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay, but let's get a little bit horny and tell some stories regardless. Our objective is to enter the mall. Well, that shouldn't be too hard. What's that? Oh, we have another objective. Destroy $50,000 worth of stuff. Dang, that's more than I've made in the last 3 years working at Thin Boy Hooters. I really love the work and the customers, but as soon as they start recognizing me on my trips to the mall to get my nails done, it becomes a little bit weird. This particular mall held a lot of my patrons inside, so I fulfilled their fantasies of being tied up before putting my pungent kill stick to good use. Half of my humor is from Borderlands, and I see nothing wrong with that. Something I do find incredibly upsetting, however, is any company that would willingly choose to make electronics that are both worthless and green. As I inserted the dildo machine in the correct orifice and took out all of my pent-up rage on a register that did nothing wrong, I made my way to the car dealership where I attempted to end the mission right here by destroying the car that looks more expensive than my stamp collection. Alas, it must be one of the Hot Wheel cars from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Part 5. I did hope to find a purse that says something along the lines of I am both extremely submissive and breedable, but was largely disappointed with the stock choices. I was also slightly confused at Overkill's choice to not have a running tally of damages, but in my short time of playing Payday, I've learned to not question the gods or they will crash your computer. It was around this time when all of my high school bullies suddenly appeared to tie me up and tickle my feet. Much to my dismay, there was no option to submit, so I was faced with only one option: to ensure that there would be enough holes in their body to permit the 10,000 subscriber special orgy. This proved super effective, like any time Charizard even remotely looks in my direction. With those wings and teeth, he's just so hot. Charizard actually has a lot in common with the jewelry that I end up stealing from the only store that really seems to have anything of value. Why humans choose to have things encrusted with some of the most expensive stones, I have no clue. I would much rather have a strawberry flavored Uncrustable. Giving the three guys who are sworn to carry my burden some jewelry, I figure that you all know now what type of person that I am, and that we can actually talk about what is going on in the game. In my first few attempts at stealth on other missions, my huge badunkadunk was seen a mile away, and that was before I made the decision to wear the heaviest armor available to me. I'm rocking an ammo bag, whatever this rifle is with a scope, and a concussion grenade. I fully recognize that I have no clue what I'm doing, and I am ready for all the experts to tell me in the comments how much of a bottom I am. Little do you know, I like being talked down to. Now a little bit more replenished, I head back to Turtle Beach's main headquarters and grab a stupid amount of money from the safe that I just got done drilling in more ways than one. A key tip for people who can't seem to complete their New Year's resolution: make sure your resolutions start with "I'm going to continue" rather than "I'm going to start." It makes it so much easier to stick with them, and you can continue eating ice cream without feeling guilty despite your parents encouraging you to develop an eating disorder which took you around a half of your 20s to fix. Snipers shooting in the skylights proved to be slightly annoying, but due to the easier difficulty, they didn't instantly kill me, which was very polite of them. Honestly, all the cops in this game are really polite. They just line up in front of your gun and let you unload all of your juices. I absolutely love orange juice, but I always forget to pick some up, which makes me a little bit sad. Upon taking out my mix of emotions back at the car again, I seem to do enough damage to it to now that we are up to $40,000 worth of damages. Why the $200,000 on our backs isn't enough, I don't know, but I really don't mind as I get to shoot liquor bottles in hopes of changing my father's childhood. Take that, Grandpa. Killing things is so much fun in this game, despite my appreciation for police officers. But what is even more fun is just tanking a bunch of damage and casually reloading my gun while doing so. Shields continue to be a big drag on my parade, but I have both a crew skill that allows one of my guys to shoot through them, and that one random skill that allows you to use melee and the occasional bullet to stun them. I constantly forget that I have these and continue to get my nipples in a bind regardless. Payday 2 has a lot of really cool aspects to it outside of the gunplay, most notably the enemies. Between their variety and their ability to rappel down fills me with such excitement that I struggle to find the stairs to the roof. See, I really thought that waiting for the helicopter would be best done near the top floor. Considering that people were coming out of the third floor and snipers were on the roof, this idea really seemed to be one of my few winning ones over the past few decades. But of course, Payday throws all of that out the window and has you grab onto a rope to escape. This stuff is crazy. Almost as realizing that Apple has some serious competition in the Pear Store. I thought that was pretty fun, but everyone else didn't, so I threw on my mask and got to work on the next job. Despite making much more money in the last job as a side task, we are told to steal a measly $15,000. I say that $15,000 is measly, but it's actually my yearly wage. In one of the 4 stores I'm supposed to rob on this particular block, I found a couple grand and a safe. Oh, you've been a bad safe. It's time to put a hole in you. Heading across the street, I find a similar situation and start working on punishing that particular glorified birth certificate holder as well. One of the bad parts about not having a chance at playing this game with others is that AI are like my dog after I come home from work. I can't go to my own kitchen to grab a can of chicken noodle soup without her crawling between my legs. I would have said something about being between my legs, but I draw the line at bestiality. I originally ping-ponged back and forth between the 2 stores in hopes of keeping both drills running at once, but even my new friend couldn't keep up with how many people I needed to murder to get across the street. Not only does this remind me of Chicago, but that I also need to give Frank a bath when I get a chance. Frank is my new friend, by the way. Resolving to stick around too now to get into the conspicuously placed safe, I decided to give the place a review on Yelp. I think that's what the kids are calling the newspaper these days. 4 out of 5 on the decor. I absolutely love the color scheme, but the decorations feel a little bit lacking, and as someone who is 1'8" on a good day, I guarantee you that I'd even ruffle my feathers a little bit with how low those lanterns are. 3 out of 5 on comfort. Anyone who likes bar stools scare me. Are you people even human? 0 to 5 on the service. I ordered 8 donuts on their mobile app, 2 for each of us, and I still have yet to receive my order. Instead, I decided to steal what I believe to be jewelry in the safe here. If this isn't jewelry, don't take it out on the game for having bag textures, and instead, take it out on me for having a computer that is on life support and constantly requires WD-40 and duct tape. At one point, I went back to the repair store in hopes of stealing some electronics, but as it turns out, all their models are fake, and despite the store in the mall having the big bucks, this store has been ripping off customers, leaving them to have to take tons of electronics back in the 2009 recall. The next store that I was going to rob had a bunch of cool urns or decanters. I really can't tell. Please note that I am an uncultured swine and everything but land before time. Full disclosure, I've busted a nut at the dinosaurs before. What can I say? I have a bunch of time on my hands waiting for these drills. About before, and drawing the line at bestiality. After both the safe and I climaxed, I grabbed the money and had the splendid opportunity to work with Frank again. The way he fires continuously without needing to be reloaded makes me realize that all the years playing Skyrim as a stealth archer were a complete waste of time, and that being a mobile tank is a much better bet. For those of you actually curious on my opinions about this game, it's super fun. While there really isn't a story, it's one of those games that if you could pop in with a group of friends and rob a bank, it'd be really fun. At first I wanted to say that it wouldn't have a whole lot of replayability after completing the career mode, but I'm still a virgin in this game's eyes and all the weapons and skills get me really excited. One of the draws to crime in general is a similar type of excitement. When your heart races faster than it has in the past few months of mindless work. When you taste your own fear of being caught. When a bead of sweat rolls down the side of your face, grasping at the scape of your jaw. I can only describe that intensity through similar emotions and have no empathy among thieves, except those searching for a heart, as I haven't stolen anything in my adult life. When I was a child and the modern restraints of morals bared very little on my tiny hands, it was a different story entirely, one that I will now share with you. I was always quite a curious boy, so when appointments for annual checkups or the occasional shots were demanded, I went willingly with my mother to see their completion. I'd always sit with the doctor and be the one that would ultimately ask more questions than were given. Little did I know this curiosity would follow me for the rest of my life. This particular day, I threw on my huge winter coat before I headed out of the office and followed my mother into the elevator when she mentioned something about stopping by the gift store to get something to drink. She would always drink Pepsi, much to my dismay, as I had always heard that pop was bad for you from the dentist. But even then, I knew that others' vices were not mine to correct. We were always poor growing up. Not enough for me to deserve pity, but enough that I learned to never ask for anything due to the constant arguments of money that shook the windows and would be heard by even the neighbors had we not lived out in the countryside. By this time, she had grabbed her pop and we were just wandering around the store. Window shopping, as I came to understand. All of these items sitting there, waiting to be picked up and obtained for whatever this currency was that seemed to be of concern. She stopped at a section full of all the gum. It always amazes me how many flavors there are, but anything labeled cinnamon and red hot should be burned along with pedophiles. Her hesitancy always irritated me. Why not make a decision? You already know that you're going to say it's too expensive like usual and walk away. Just as the thought crossed my mind, she started walking to the counter to pay for a drink. She of course asked me if I wanted anything when we had first walked in, but I responded with the usual no before she even had a chance at finishing her sentence. But then I wanted something. I wanted that pack of gum. I hesitated for a moment, but then I remembered how much I hated hesitation, and snapped the plastic wrap pink package. Hiding it up the sleeve of my large coat, it was completely invisible to anyone walking by, and with the eyes of the cashier being on my mom, I didn't get caught. During the ride home, I slipped the pack into my coat pocket and remained quiet. I hadn't at that age developed the tightening in the back of my throat that guilt ensues, so I felt nothing. I had achieved my goal, a successful heist, if you will. Some of you may be wondering now where that pack of gum ended up. We had this cabinet to the right of the sink that housed the chips, and when we were having a good month, gum. After getting home and taking off the jacket, I left it in my coat pocket, knowing that it'd be suspicious to put it in the cabinet now. 2 days later, on a Monday before school, I slipped the pack of gum behind a large bag of Doritos. I haven't stolen anything since, save a few of my brother's old clothes, but those of you who grew up less fortunate are more than familiar with hand-me-downs. They may be hand-me-downs, but I'm up to level 39 after completing a Christmas quest that I still have no clue what I would accomplish during, but at least I have drugs. Another thing I have is a fanfiction of a very dear member of the channel's Discord. The one, the only, Tank. This was kindly written by Ciel and only slightly modified to fit my feng shui. I love that phrase, by the way, so all credit goes to them. A slightly more lewd version was written by Cream, but you'll have to stop by the server if you want to bask in that particular glory. It was a cold day in the barn, and Owl was just cleaning his feathers when suddenly the earth started rumbling, and the barn shook as a long barrel shot through the open barn doors, and Tank rolled in. Owl blushed as he saw the beauty of the M1A1 Abrams that Tank was. Tank saw Owl peeking over the walls of the hayloft, and suddenly erupted in a soothing, well-oiled voice. "Hey, pal, how are you?" Owl suddenly passed out from shock. 10 minutes later, Owl woke up expecting to not see the voluptuous tracks dug into the dirt of the barn floor, but alas he saw Tank and yelled, "What are you doing in my barn?" Tank heard Owl and spun his barrel to say, "Hey, sorry I shocked you, but I'm being stored in here now." Owl took the news with both glee and anger, as he would now have someone to talk to instead of being a femboy on YouTube, but it would also mean that his barn was no longer his and his alone. Tank looked around and said, "So, what are you doing here in this dump?" Owl shouted in utter disappointment, "What do you mean, dump? This place is perfect for a small creature like me, unlike a beast of war like you." After hours of argument, Owl spoke. "I'm just gonna call you Tank. You're a beautiful machine of death. Why are you being stored here in this barn?" Tank says to Owl, "I was a soldier in the war. When I was killed in battle, my soul possessed the cockpit of this tank. My platoon was too scared to drive me, so I was brought here. By the way, did you call me a beautiful machine of death?" Owl hesitated for a moment before following his heart. "Yes, I called you beautiful." We're gonna leave this video here, but if you'd like to see me do Payday, like actually checking out heists like a normal YouTuber, let me know. If you liked this video, consider checking out some of my other mentally unhinged things here. Thank you to my Patreons for supporting my content. It really means a lot to me, and makes these videos possible. I've been Owl, and you've been confused, but go ahead and do me a favor. Have a good one.